He's a jazz pianist. Like, do you call yourself a podcaster or an artist? Like, where does this come from, you know? And is that something you, like, is that how you identify yourself, or is it just, like, something you do?
That's a great question for the podcast.
Great question for the podcast.
Wow. What do I call myself? Who do I identify?
What do you call yourself?
Well, on my resume, I write podcast host. Maybe do I write founder even? Founder and host of the Post Definition podcast? Because it's fucking true.
Yeah. Because I did it all myself. Yeah.
Editor-in-chief.
You can make a long resume just off.
President of the podcast.
President of the podcast. And the whole cabinet and yeah.
Chief artist. Artisan.
Yeah.
It's interesting about art because I never thought of myself as artistic, especially like until like 20. I had like right now we're staying in our friend Rose's house. Yeah. And when like I first met her, we were in this hostel with so much good vibes. Yeah. And playing music. Yeah. And there was this beautiful old Japanese man with great vibes, Kazu. Yeah. And like we were all like playing guitar, and I'm not like a musician in any sense, but like everyone was like contributing and having a good time. And like I remember like one time this guy was pushing me to be like, yeah, sing something, like just go freestyling, and I was like freestyling, and he was like, oh damn, nice. Like as I was going, he's like, oh, that's fresh, like, and I was that's like, yeah. Amazing. And I was like, and at first I was singing in Italian because at that time I was speaking some Italian. Yeah. And honestly, I felt more comfortable with my like lyrics covered up. Like no one can understand Italian there. Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I got started, like expressing myself a bit more. That was the beginning of the art. Yeah. And I just I started writing poetry. Oh, cool. Yeah. And I did that kind of somewhat consistently for the last few years. And podcast for me, it's not that artistic. It's almost like it's like a cross between like a school assignment, like almost like a report, like you prepare, like a philosophy, like I studied philosophy. You know, you prepare ideas, questions, and then you put in your social skills, your friendships, your travel experiences, and editing and like video and just like visual ideas, and it all kind of comes together into the podcast. Yeah. And for me, those are all things I'm comfortable with. But for like, I don't know. I wouldn't call myself an artist, but okay, but there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Is it just because like an artist is sort of an all-encompassing thing, and you'd rather be a verb in your life, not an adjective, if that makes sense? It's a good question. I guess in some sense I'm an artist. I mean, I take photos and I think Freddy's an artist, and when I met him, I thought he was an artist. We have one opinion. Yeah. No, but seriously, from an outside perspective, you're a collector of the things you're encountering, be it through film, be it through podcast. You're documenting and presenting things. I guess you could consider that journalism, but in a lot of ways, that's sort of like storytelling. And I don't know, in my mind,
is like storytelling a better way of thinking about it for you? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I always wrote in school, like essays, you know, and then I wrote as a philosophy student, and then I also write articles.
Yeah.
But none, like at first they were more about like data science stuff. Like I'm working on this project and I'm sharing how to do this.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think of it as art, but I do realize that writing is an art. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, if you think about it like that, we're all artists, and some more than others, you could say.
That's
and
true.
I'm becoming more of an artist. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I made this short film for my podcast, and I thought that was artistic. I
Yeah,
guess.
it was artsy. Yeah. I think there's, because I'm studying saxophone as well. That's my major. Woo. And sometimes when I think of myself, when I like maybe I'm thinking, oh, am I a saxophonist? I suddenly feel really scared because that seems like I have to leave some of the other aspects of art or music I like behind me. You know, one thing I found, like when you make saxophone, or maybe when other people make art like sort of a central part of their life or studies, is I found that I really have to find other things to do, because it's no longer just sort of something I do to pass the time and understand the world. It's like that's what I do, and now it's like a side project if I'm writing, and I artist, saxophone player, I don't know how useful it is to name things also. I mean, that's your whole podcast premise, but I don't think, like, nobody's one thing. And when you say you are an artist, it makes it seem like you don't have the space maybe to do other things. And so if you're a person who makes art, if you think about yourself that way, maybe you think you're a little bit freer to engage in other things. I don't know. Do you feel
Definitely. No, I mean, well, first of all, I believe in like multidisciplinary perspectives, like
surprise.
like the fact that you can bring your saxophone expertise hopefully to painting in the future. I don't like, it's complicated how, and it's definitely not direct, but like you're gonna come out with a unique perspective.
Well, that's what makes things rich, right? Is that it's not
you're gonna come with like some crazy brain waves that the people that didn't study saxophone don't have, and you're gonna have new perspectives because of that. So I think that when you do something outside of art, it's not necessarily a distraction. It could be building on your art, your future art.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, everything's connected, right? Do you think, like, because in your short film you're talking about like who you are in that moment and in that context, and is there a place that you went where you weren't who you thought you were?
You mean like when I was there I thought I was something, and then when I look back
well, when you were there, you just like you were put in another context, and suddenly, I don't know, it didn't feel the same as when you were in Sydney, or it didn't feel the same. Like, did you just step off a plane and you're walking through somewhere? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, never when I stepped off a plane.
Yeah.
Like, stepping off a plane, you're not a new person. You are looking at a new place. You're still the old person, I think. Like, I remember the feelings of stepping off planes and being like, wow.
You've stepped off a lot of planes.
Yes.
A lot of travel,
Yeah. But, like, I remember, like, you know, some people, they think they're one thing, but if you surround them with another group of people or another context, they see that they're not that. Like, someone might be a leader in a group of followers, and then they enter a group of leaders and they're a follower.
Boy. Yeah.
And I have experienced that in the sense that, like, some places I feel like the most confident person in the room, and other places I can't like get a word in or something, you know. And you realize that, I'm not one thing, you know. And it's not just about like, so I feel really sorry for people who haven't experienced that much and they think they're something, and I'm like, please, like, go explore a bit, and realize that you can find people that are on your wavelength. You can find a place where you fit. You can find a place that makes you feel good, and you're not gonna find everything. Like, by the way, when you were talking about like wanting to be accepted by the boys, I was thinking about something.
Okay.
because I kind of also had a similar experience to this, to kind of like the trans thing.
Yeah, elaborate.
Because I really committed to this travel life, and I really needed to be right about it.
Okay.
Like, you know, people were always telling me like, oh, it's really nice that you travel, but it's too expensive for me, or something like this. And I was like really like determined to be like, it doesn't cost that much money. I can, it's about courage and feeling like you can go places and accept the crazy situations that come to you, and handling this stuff. And also because I like left the US and like never came back.
When did you leave the US? How many years ago?
Like I went for the first time when I was 19.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
My age. Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, so more or less it's been like 5 years.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to be right that now I'm in a better place, you know? It's not that hard.
Yeah, okay.
But at the same time, like when I was in Germany, like I was almost owning it. Like I'm learning German. I'm committing to this place. I said I like Germany. I like German people.
Yeah.
Then sometimes I would encounter something I don't like, and I would be like, oh fuck. And I would take it personally, you know, like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, am I trying to defend this? And then I realized, no, you know, I'm not like you trying to become a boy. I'm not trying to become German. But I do want to end up in a place that feels right, and I do want to be able to say like I did the right thing. So yeah, like also like I really loved Denmark, and then it feels funny because I haven't really ever been back. And then it's like, do I love Denmark if no one even like knows me there? You know, like
I have a really similar feeling. I lived in Japan when I was younger for 4 years. But I literally haven't been back to Japan since 2012. And, you know, sometimes I say like, oh, I lived in Japan when I was little, and people are asking me questions about it, but it's a long time to not be somewhere, and I've grown up, and it's grown, like our friends have like grown, and now it's a different thing, and it's like, did I really live in Japan? If like I couldn't go back and like, I mean, there's a few family friends I could talk to, but it, you know, but I think that's what makes something special is like the lack of permanency. And I remember the first time I like did a little trip by myself, which was not that long ago again, because I'm quite young, but actually, you know, when I did a volunteer trip in Costa Rica when I was in 8th grade, snuck it in right before the pandemic. And then I wasn't able to travel, obviously. And I remember I had this 2 weeks, and it's the longest I'd ever been away from my family and my brother, and I felt like, wow, I'm going to have all these experiences, and then I'm never going to see these people again, or I won't see them in a long time, and I'm not going to be this person, and people won't have known this Carmen when I get back to the U.S. And at first that made me really sad, right? Because you want people to see this Denmark version of Freddy, you know, or something. But then I thought, oh, but that's kind of cool. That's just a moment. You know, and the lack of permanency made it special for me. I don't know if you feel that way.
No, I like that too. I'm okay with temporariness.
Yeah.
And I would say, yeah, I have some Danish friends, but most of them are from actually after I lived in Denmark. So it's kind of, yeah. Anyway,
it's a whole complicated thing.
It's very complicated. Everything's complicated.
I think traveling and moving around, you know, I'm really grateful for it in the sense that I got to like restart multiple times. And I think every time you travel somewhere new, you sort of get to wipe the palette clean, you know, and or at least look at it again and think about it, you know, even if you're not, you know, completely moving everything away. I think you get a chance to sort of reimagine who you could be.
Yes.
And in a way, I think that's a very trans experience, but most trans experiences are just human experiences.
Yeah.
You know, it always, because sometimes I get quite frustrated about, you know, the way trans people are talked about and keep being dredged up in politics and just like beaten around as the scapegoat for all the problems in the United States. Sometimes it's really stupid, actually, because in some ways we're not that special or interesting, you know. Sure, there's a really cool perspective you have of experiencing the world from two different directions. I think that's really important. But lots of people have that who aren't trans. And I think it's just a matter of, like, it's just change. People are afraid of change. I think that's why people are sometimes afraid of trans people, is because they're letting you know this could change about your life. Like, it's just an open door. Someone, like, people seeing me on the street sometimes, you know, even on my walk here, there's like some, you know, and I sometimes wonder for myself if, like, did they just see something that's possible? And sometimes people react like,
Definitely.
and I think that's a lot. I think that's behind a lot of the sort of controversy in the United States, is this, that we're showing people what's possible, you know?
Yeah, a door that they never opened.
Yeah. Travel confronts you with that too, right?
Yes.
There's this whole reality you could have been living. Shoot.
Yeah. And if you didn't find it fast enough,
Yeah.
you have to choose to accept it or not.
Yeah, timing is key. That was not on purpose. 7 o'clock.
I don't know if you can hear this, but the bell is ringing
Yeah.
from the church.
We were talking a lot about things that we've struggled with when it comes to being a guy or being a masculine person. And I think there's also a lot of joy I get out of it. And I was curious what for you is something that you found that you really like about being a guy, or that you enjoy encompassing in a masculine way.
Great question.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just give like a really quick example, because it's the first thing that jumped in my head.
Yeah.
It's like today, I went outside and I boxed in the park.
Uh-huh.
Like shadow boxing.
Yeah.
And, well, I like to reconnect to this like aggressive side, I think. Especially when it's in such a healthy environment. Like, it's just for exercise purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also releases some kind of energy that builds up in me. It makes me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I come back and I sleep well, and I feel like I accomplished something, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm just getting in my head lately about like feminist stuff. And when like girls in the park were like staring at me boxing, I didn't think like, oh, they're like thinking I'm hot. I thought they're judging me. Oh, you know, for being like toxic masculine. And I thought that's so. But I was like, I know I'm making these stories up because I didn't ask these girls.
Of course, you have no idea what's happening.
Of course. But I know some people think like that.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. And I think that's unfair. So that was a little bit of a pro and con thing.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it would be great also if girls would box in the park. It's not something that I want to gatekeep.
Course.
And it's not like I'm actually punching anyone. So it doesn't have anything to do with my strength.
Yeah.
It's just about the going through the motions.
Yeah, the motions. Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah. I think also toxic masculinity is, I wrote a whole article about this actually. It's not a helpful way to understand masculinity. You know, say what it is. If it's sexism, say it's sexism. Misogyny, entitlement. Name the problem, you know? So you feel like when you're doing sports or maybe getting that energy out, that's something you enjoy about masculinity.
Yeah, well, that's something I enjoy. But I can also, I mean, I love sports. Especially like sports that involve like a little bit more like muscular tension. Yeah. You know? But I also love yoga. I do yoga almost every day, and that's considered a bit more feminine. And it's about like releasing.
Yeah.
But I like it all. I'm really into my
sports and
physical.
movement. Yeah.
But come back to me. How about you?
Yes. Okay. I think in the context of being an artist, and specifically like jazz saxophone, there's a lot of sort of masculine energy that I didn't really like for a long time, because I do think there's some problems with sexism in jazz. But lately I've found that like playing in this sort of like very forward style, if you're a jazz person at all, I really like Gary Bartz and Kenny Garrett, and they've got this very like pew, like every solo starts with like bum, and you're just coming, and it's just like this total, you know, you have to roll your shoulders back and just like breathe. And sometimes I really like that I'm able to connect with these players in that way, even though I'm not talking to them or you know, engaging with them, it's just sort of taking that energy that I do think, like, some of them have this sort of very masculine energy. And I also want to point out that for me, at least, masculinity is not something just for men. And, you know, one of my favorite saxophone players, Nicole Glover, has this like super rough, abrasive, and very like straightforward way of playing saxophone that to me feels very masculine. And I find that I used to sort of step away from that, but now that I'm like sort of just embracing this, just like, I know this is a very saxophone thing to do, but just like, you know, the air is going forth, I feel a lot more connected to the instrument. And I think that's something that I love sourcing. This is the candles crackling. I love getting this sort of masculine and like not, I mean, it can be aggressive, like playing style and saxophone from all saxophone players. I think it's really fun for me. Yeah.
But that seems like a really healthy way of getting that kind of aggression out. Just like me boxing in the park.
Yeah.
Because no one's getting hurt by this jazz.
It's
right?
true. It's true.
It's just like an energy that we feel inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not letting it build up.
Mm-hmm.
We're expressing it. Maybe it's something, whatever you believe, but maybe if you believe in like evolution, you say like, oh, this was from, survival instinct, and now we don't need that. Now we get it out through music and through exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that. I was thinking of another aspect of masculinity that I like. Mm-hmm. And like I've always identified with this kind of, you said straightforwardness.
Yeah.
Like for me, like a little bit more like logical thinking and less emotional. And I don't, and then I like that you of course said that this is also for women, because it can obviously be problematic to say like women are emotional and illogical.
Yeah. This is somewhat problematic. Yeah.
But like one thing I did learn through like philosophy, studying philosophy, is that in my opinion, what I gathered is that like logic is also based on belief and emotion. And it's not like the end all truth. Yeah. Sometimes reason is not the tool that you need to get like to know what to do. Yeah. Sometimes it's intuition, sometimes reason, sometimes it's belief, Reason has like dead ends. Yeah. Like for instance, if you want to say like most people who believe in science, they would say like evolution is a fact, but for me it's a belief, because you have to believe in science. You have to believe in these baseline rules. So that's like, I want to say that logic isn't like something higher, but it's just something that I resonate with. Interesting.
Yeah. I think when we're talking about things about masculinity that we enjoy, for me it's like, I don't know, I'm very sensitive to who's around me. And I love drawing masculinity from places that you wouldn't expect to be masculine, like some of my very masculine friends who aren't men are my favorite people to talk about masculinity with, because it's something that wasn't pushed upon them, Again, it's something they chose to embody. And I think to an extent everyone has to choose to embody it. But for me, learning about masculinity from like maybe really, really sort of butch lesbian people or like non-binary people who are really masculine, I might be a little bit biased, but that's my favorite type of masculinity, because they're not doing it just because they're a guy and it's a prerequisite. They're doing it, or they're doing masculinity. That seems sort of weird when I'm saying it. They're embodying masculinity because it's what feels right to them. And I think it's this sort of rightness in like, sort of this like confidence in the way of carrying yourself that I really like seeing in people who weren't, just cisgender guys. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, that's very cool. Can I ask you like a more complex question? I think it's complex.
Oh Lord, okay.
About like it's more about the essence of trans. Yeah. And like how one becomes more masculine or doesn't become, just like accepts or starts to embrace the thing that was already there. Or like, I know you already touched on it, the fact that like you wanted to be masculine on the outside, and then now you are so confident that you can actually go back to sometimes being a little bit less masculine and so on. but I'm still curious about like how that works. Like,
me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I think I had this weird thing where the more masculine, or the more I felt like a guy, and I just knew that to be true, the more I felt comfortable with not like being super masculine, because I just knew it was true, you know. Especially after surgery, I wasn't dressing in things that were very, well, I guess I'm not doing a very good job right now, but very structured and stuff, so people couldn't see the shape of my body. After surgery, I felt like now I'm just wearing these things because it's what I like to wear. Now, there are amazing writers and philosophers who've talked a lot about what it means to be masculine and feminine and how this is connected to being male or female or otherwise, and I'm not one of these people. I've tried to figure it out, and in the end I just go off of like, does this feel right? I think that's my question I ask myself pretty often. I have two questions. Does this feel right? And would tiny Carmen approve? And for me, it's just about the moment. You know, when I'm about to play a saxophone concert or something, I love to put on my suit and my shoes, and like, that's when I like to feel very masculine. Awesome. Because I feel very confident.
That's very cool.
And when I'm feeling a little bit more artsy or funky or spring-like or something, then I think tiny Carmen would approve of the green skirt, you know. Yeah. But I don't. That's a really hard question to answer, and
yeah. Can I ask like a sub question of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how do you think this affects women who don't want to become men, but they want to be more masculine? Isn't it a bit like, like, why do you feel like you need to become a man in order to be more masculine?
Yes, good question. And right when I was coming out, my parents asked me this as well. They're like, why can't you just be like a masculine girl, you know? It's totally okay. And it comes down simply just to the fact that I wasn't a woman, you know?
Yeah. Like you said.
Yeah.
Does this feel right?
Yeah, it didn't feel right to me. I mean, to an extent, I'd already tried it out, you know? I like to tell people that I didn't transition. I just like failed miserably at being a girl. I just sucked. It didn't work out for me. You know, it didn't feel good. And I realized that once I like felt like a guy, and then I like, you know, put on the suit or the button up, you know, I have a love of like old men's jackets, and for some reason just this sort of like feeling of like, I don't know, physically it's in my shoulders, if I'm going to say where I feel it a lot. It's just this sort of like here, and to me it felt different when I felt like a guy. I don't know. Yeah. That's
a great answer.
Is that enough of an but I ask myself this question a lot, and one thing when you asked me to do this podcast I was really worried about is I tend to change my mind about like, everything a lot. I'm very, very indecisive, and I'm probably going to watch this in 3 weeks and cry.
You are the embodiment of the Post Definitions podcast.
But
everything I said I was, I am no longer.
Not, but I think it, when I think back to like who I thought I was in regards to gender, I'm like, that was kind of immature. A little bit naive at times. Like, I'm a boy and I like being a boy all the time, and that's what I want to be. And I was like, nobody feels that way in real life.
Yeah.
Naivity.
2 more things.
Wow. Do like a check? Okay.
Because we just touched on naivety, and maybe we can dive into that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have a connection to naivety.
Great.
In my first question.
Great.
And is that a pushback against, like, I personally don't like this, what would Little Freddy do? Oh. Because for me, Little Freddy was naive. Oh. You know, I believe that I learned a lot, and I'm listening to my current self, and I think he's smarter and wiser than the young Freddy. Now, what's your response?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I hope I got smarter since when I was 7. I think I can understand that. I think for me, I'm not necessarily looking for intelligence in young Carmen. I'm just looking for the part of me that was experiencing life without feeling like I had to be something for other people. And I feel like when I was younger, especially living in Japan, you know, surrounded by all these like the cosplay festivals and all this type of fashion and, you know, reading my like fashion books, I really didn't feel like I had to be something for other people. I look back at photos of myself from that time and I was like, I was a really cool kid. And I don't think I was smart by any means, but I think I was freer with myself than I have been. And so I'm not necessarily thinking about young Carmen. I guess I'm asking myself the question, what would I do if I wasn't burdened or aware of other people's expectations?
Okay.
But I understand what you mean. Young Carmen wasn't very smart. Like, I would hope I've progressed slightly since then, you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to think about what other people want. I mean, I was wearing like really ridiculous outfits in really different places. Sometimes it's important to be aware of your situation, you know. I can acknowledge that.
Yeah, it can be.
Interesting though. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, just for me, like, it's like, you know, like there's a piano next to us. When I was a kid, I was forced to play piano, and I really, really, really didn't want to play piano.
Okay.
Then as soon as I got the opportunity to quit, like I begged my parents for years, and then they finally let me quit. I never did it again. I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I know that piano would be a very fun thing for me now. I was wrong back then about what I wanted because I was forced and so on, you know.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, I still follow my child self. Like, I know that my child self would be super proud that I'm traveling, you know, that I'm like, you know, living. But it happened that I was right in that sense. But yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting way of thinking about it too. Yeah. You had a part 2 of your question.
Well, the part 2 was like, maybe you have a question.
Yeah. Well,
part 2 was for
naivety,
you.
Yeah. Well, my experience with naivety is simply like I write a lot. I'm an obsessive journaler, and you know, sometimes I look back to I've started this in like 8th grade in the pandemic, and I, you know, of course, you're reading the things that you really cared about and you wanted and you thought about, and sometimes you just gotta laugh because, and so I'm just very intrigued by this idea that we're like probably what we think right now could be really wrong to us in a few years, and I was curious if you had any experience with sort of reflecting upon decisions or thoughts you had and just like, why on earth did I think that was anything worthy of consideration?
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah.
But I was talking to a friend recently about when we should regret things, and we came to a conclusion.
Oh, good to know. Tell me, please.
We basically said, like, anything that we thought was right, and we didn't let courage or fear stop us. Like, we went with courage, and we thought it was right, then we can't regret that, no matter the result. Like, you know, that's like, you tried your best. But if you're stopped by either fear or because you literally thought what you're doing is wrong, then you should regret that. Either one.
Wow. The implications. Okay. Do you have an example in your own life?
Well, I mean, that's kind of how I like know that I made the right decision, like leaving Australia when I had a job there, because I left, you know, it took courage and I thought it was right.
Yeah.
And regardless of the result, which I'm happy with the result, but in some ways I'm not happy with the result, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't regret it. Yeah. That's a positive
so when you
example.
do something that you believe to be right at that time and you move forward through it. Yeah. Do you think it's possible to be misguided enough where
you can regret it? Oh,
I'm
yeah,
just
probably. Yeah. No, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
because some
Probably,
people
yeah.
are very, very confident of the very silly things they do, and I think there's a lot of room
I
for
regret that. Yeah,
reflection. But I understand where you're coming from
it
too.
depends on what you want from the word regret, I guess.
Regret too. You can recognize that something was wrong, but you don't have to regret it because that's really what you believe to be right at the time.
How about, what is the purpose of regret? Is it ever productive?
Only if you know, I'm thinking of like things you could have said to people that you can't say now. Something I think about often. And is there regret from not saying those things? But I think it can be productive if you use it as a reason to move forward now, to say the things you wish you'd said earlier,
Yes.
to do things you wish you'd done earlier.
Because regret, I guess you could say, is like an emotional reaction. And sometimes you need those emotions to like to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. To make, I think if I was to, I had a very good friend of mine for almost 10 years, was my closest friend, and there was lots of times, we're not friends anymore, unfortunately. We like had a very weird, like, it ended very quickly, very weirdly. And something that I really was regretting from this was just not asking her, you know, how she was doing. You know, it was obviously, in retrospect, she was dealing with a lot, and I don't know. And now I think in that way that regret is productive, because it makes me take a step back from good friendships I have now and really just be more empathetic to the person.
Yeah, nice.
I think you can recognize when you sort of messed up, and I think that's one of those moments, you know, you have to use that as a reason to change.
Yeah. There was like a moment where I really messed up.
Okay.
We're not going to get into that.
No worries.
And then,
but it does happen. Freddie has a fault. Yeah.
And like, I remember in the weeks or the months after that, I was so like forgiving of the people around me, and it felt really good actually, because but it happened that I was surrounded by good people, you know. If you're really forgiving of bad people, maybe that's not a good thing. But everything, I was like, so I felt so comforting to people around me, because I felt like anything they did wrong, I was like this like hippie guy,
that's just
and now I probably like bounce out a bit, but like, that was that felt nice actually. I mean, that was a good time.
Yeah, totally.
Like, because otherwise what I feel is like a bit of anger or frustration towards people, and that doesn't feel good at all. But there's not a lot that I can do about that other than boxing in the park.
Playing saxophone very, very loudly. Yeah, I think also there's, you know, one thing that has, and this is again, I'm really painfully aware that we're recording this podcast when I'm 19, because I know this is just going to be like an archive of my terrible thoughts. But like, I have a really strong reaction right now when people say like, oh, you're 19, you're 20, you're in college, this is the time. And I'm like, I feel like they're sort of projecting their like regret or just unhappiness with the lack of freedom they've given themselves now, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, yes, of course this is the time. Like, I'm having a great time, and there's no other time. It's just the present, you know? I'm going to make what it is out of it. But I think the people who are telling you, like, now is the moment, I think they need to seize their moment too, you know? It seems like they want something for you that they actually want for themselves. I
totally agree. I think that's totally bullshit.
Yeah.
And that kind of pressure is what leads to what I was describing earlier. People that overwork and over socialize and over drink often, things like that. That they're like, you know, they're like, I need to do it today, even when they're exhausted, and they don't realize that they're gonna like burn out. And you do have your whole life, so
I think so. Yeah.
And I think the US is worse for this.
I was going to bring this up,
because like, you're supposed to do your college from 18 to 22 or 21, and you're supposed to go right to career and so on. But like, Europe is way more chill about this. Like,
it does feel
you
that
have
way.
this kind of 18 to 30 year range for like getting your shit figured out. Yeah
Which I think could be expanded, honestly, too. You know? Yeah, I think also it's really, speaking about the US a little bit, at least for me, I feel like there's this desire to catch up all the time. You're always making up for lost time. Yeah. And sometimes really with saxophone, like, I'll find myself thinking I need to play more, practice more intensely, because last week I didn't do enough and I have to make up for that. And I'm like, so you're always playing this game of like match match play, you know, you're always, it's just like this sort of brinksmanship, you know, this is where I'm supposed to be and this is where I'm supposed to be, and you're always like treadmilling. And what I wish for some of the people around me is that they wouldn't be afraid to take things slow, especially musicians, my musician friends.
Also yourself, right?
Yeah, that'd be great for me. Guilty. I'm sure I'm going to look back at this and like, you're talking about being relaxed, you crazy person.
That's why you're figuring it out. So.
Yeah. This will be an interesting like exercise and like retrospect in a few weeks or years.
Of regret. Exercise in regret.
I'm already thinking of things I've changed my mind about since we started talking about the podcast.
But that's great, you know. I love it when this happens on the podcast sometimes.
Yeah.
They say like, oh, I didn't realize that. You brought that out of me. That's great. You know, this has been productive. This has been like a journaling session.
It's seriously. I think also there's so much more value in doing something the slow, right way than running into something. And when we're talking about like going through college at the right time, I know last year I felt a lot of pressure to get into conservatory because, like you said, the US college starts when you're 18, you know, and I technically didn't make it into any. I made it into like a preparatory program, and I messed up a lot of auditions, and I messed up a lot of bureaucracy, and in my head it was just like, wow, what are you going to do? You know, you're already a year late. And I came into this conservatory, and like there's a piano player who's 30 who's starting his bachelor, and I was like, Ruben, I was like, you're very good for me, you know, to see what it's like to do something later. I definitely still want to be learning when I'm 30. I'd love to be starting a new major when I'm 30. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing you can do other than acknowledge where you are. So it's just like you have to accept and move from there, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be lazy, but you don't have to be fast, you know. Like there's so many good things that come out of slowness. But I will say that probably sometimes you need like some intensity, because then things also unique to intensity come out. I think but not too often.
I know for saxophone, and I know maybe you're not a musician, so I also find this in sports and athletics a lot, is it's really about the balance of intensity, but what you do before and after really matters. I just had a really interesting class with this bassist, Michael League, and he said being a good musician is the same as being a good person, you know? And I think about that a lot now since he said that, because it comes down to putting in the work, but also putting in the work of rest, which makes sort of the intense part more fulfilling. And you have to just think about, how does this aid everything? And maybe the day of not playing saxophone and recording a podcast with a friend in someone's house, you know, maybe that's really important to saxophone as well. And I don't know if you found something for you where this like in between time is more important than you give it credit, but for me, I've found that it's something I probably need to think about more. Yeah,
no, I think you're right. I mean, I have, I definitely think you need that in between time. Like to even remember. I mean, maybe you're really organized, so you know exactly all the things you want to do. But some things you just can't do under pressure and stuff like that, I think.
This is true.
And you don't know what's going to come out of this great podcast. So.
No, that's true.
Maybe we should wrap it up.
I think so. The sun is going down.
That's our cue.
The time is up.
The sun is now on the
Thank you so much.
On the other side of this.
Yeah, someone else's morning is coming, you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Gift you our day.
Yeah. Thank you for the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That
all right. Awesome.
Bye. Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.